You twist a ripe tomato off the vine. It comes loose with that soft little snap. You bite in, expecting sweetness, and you get water. Pale, mealy, sour water. That is not the tomato's fault. That is something nobody told you. Because a tomato can be sweeter than a strawberry. A tomato plant can stand untouched while every other plant on the block turns gray and dusty with mildew. And the thing that does, it costs less than a cup of coffee. It is probably in your kitchen right now. We have done this for generations. Long before the garden centers existed, long before anyone sold you a bottle with a skull on the label, my people were pulling sweet, heavy tomatoes off plants that never knew a single drop of chemical spray. And only now is the outside world starting to catch up. That is the part that ought to make you a little angry, because there are whole shelves at the big stores built on you not knowing this. Bottles of fungicide for $20, $30. Bags of special tomato food. None of it needed. They have no reason to tell you what we have always known, because there is no money in a man who solves his own problem with what is already under his sink. So stay with me. Right around the middle of this, I am going to show you the $1 kitchen trick my grandmother used to stop mildew dead, the exact mix, the exact morning to spray it, the way she did it on our farm in Lancaster County, before I was tall enough to reach the top of the plants. And before we go further, do me one small favor. Tell me down in the comments what state you are growing in, or your growing zone if you know it. Just drop it in. Because the mildew problem hits different in Georgia humidity than it does in dry Colorado, and I want to know who I am talking to. I still remember the smell of the milk house on my father's place. Cool, a little sour, the stone walls sweating in July. We were a dairy family, and there was always milk that had turned, milk we could not sell and would not waste, because wasting what the good Lord provides was simply not done. My grandmother took that turned milk out to the garden in an old watering can. I thought she was feeding the dirt. I was a boy. I did not understand yet that she was doing something the English would not figure out in a laboratory for another 100 years. Before I show you exactly how she did it, I want to tell you about something that holds all of this knowledge together in one place. Everything I am sharing with you today, the milk spray, the wood ash, the eggshells, the willow water, and dozens of other handed-down cures and soil secrets are written out step by step in a book called The Garden Blueprint: Old-Fashioned Pest Cures That Cost Pennies, part of a full collection that includes the Harvest Blueprint, Amish, Soil, and Storage Secrets for Bigger Yields. If you want this knowledge on paper in your hands ready to use season after season, you can find it linked in the description below. A lot of folks have told me it is the most useful garden book they have ever owned, and at $97 for the complete set, it costs less than one season of store-bought sprays that did not work anyway. Now, let me show you what she knew. Powdery mildew is that white, dusty film that creeps over the leaves in late summer. It looks like someone dusted your plants with flour, and most folks think it is dirt, so they ignore it. It is not dirt. It is a living fungus, and it is feeding on your plant. It spreads on the wind. It loves crowded leaves and damp evenings, and once it takes hold, it chokes the leaf so it can no longer drink in the sunlight. A leaf coated in mildew is a leaf that has stopped working, and when the leaves stop working, the plant stops making sugar, and your tomatoes go flat and watery. That is the connection nobody draws for you. Mildew is not just ugly. Mildew is robbing the sweetness right out of your fruit. Now, here is what the milk does. When you spray diluted milk on a leaf and the sun hits it, something happens that sounds almost too plain to be true. The proteins in the milk react with the sunlight and produce a mild, natural oxygen burst right there on the surface of the leaf. That burst is harmless to your plant, but it is poison to the fungus. It scorches the delicate mildew threads before they can dig in. On top of that, the milk leaves behind a thin coat that the fungus simply cannot grow through. It is a shield and a sword at the same time. And this is not just an old wives' tale from my grandmother's watering can. In 1999, a researcher named Wagner Bedial ran a real trial and published it in a journal called Crop Protection. He sprayed milk on plants fighting powdery mildew, and he measured the results. The milk reduced the mildew by up to 90%. 90% from milk. He even found it worked as well as the manufactured fungicides folks were paying good money for. A man in a lab proved with numbers exactly what we had been doing with the leftover sour milk out of the milk house. So here is how you do it exactly. You mix 1 part milk to 9 parts water. That is it. A little milk goes a long way, and using it too strong can leave a smell. So do not pour it on thick, thinking more is better. Whole milk, skim milk, even powdered milk mixed with water all work because it is the proteins doing the job. You put it in any spray bottle or pump sprayer you already own. And here is the part most people get wrong. You spray it in the morning, early, on a sunny day. The sunlight is half the medicine. Spraying at dusk does almost nothing because there is no sun to set off that reaction. Coat the tops and the undersides of the leaves until they are damp, not dripping. Do it once a week, and after a heavy rain, do it again because the rain washes your shield away. Do that, and you will watch the gray haze stop spreading. The new leaves will come in clean and green, and it will cost you the few cents of milk that was going to go down the drain anyway, but stopping the mildew only protects the sweetness you already have. It does not add any. And you came here because I promised you tomatoes sweeter than the store ever sold you. So that brings us to the bigger question, the one the fertilizer companies really do not want you asking. What actually makes a tomato sweet? Most folks think it is sun, and sun matters. Most folks think it is water, and they are dead wrong about that, but we will get there. The real answer is a mineral. One mineral above all the others decides whether your tomato tastes like candy or tastes like a wet paper towel. And it is the one mineral most home gardeners never give their plants on purpose. It is potassium. Now stay with me because this is the simplest bit of science you will ever hear. And once you understand it, you will never look at your plants the same way. A tomato plant makes sugar in its leaves up at the top using sunlight. But the fruit grows lower down, so that sugar has to travel. It has to move from the leaf down through the plant and into the fruit. Potassium is the wagon that hauls it. Potassium is what carries the sugar out of the leaf and packs it into the tomato. If the plant is short on potassium, the sugar gets made but never delivered. You end up with big green leaves and bland, pale fruit. The factory is running, but the delivery wagons are sitting empty. And here is where the outside world set you up to fail. Walk into any big store and look at the plant foods. Most of them are loaded with nitrogen. Nitrogen is the cheap one, the one that makes everything look lush and green and leafy fast, so the bag looks like it is working. But too much nitrogen tells the plant to grow more leaves instead of ripening fruit. It actually fights against the sweetness. They are selling you a product that makes your plant look healthy on the shelf and taste like nothing on the plate. My grandfather never bought a bag of anything. He had a different source of potassium, and it came from the one thing every plain home produced all winter long: wood ash. The ashes from the wood stove, from the fireplace, from the burn barrel. When wood burns, the potassium in the tree does not go up the chimney. It stays behind in the gray ash, concentrated, ready to use. Old hardwood ash can run as high as 5 or 6% potassium, along with a good dose of calcium and trace minerals the plant craves. We saved it in a metal bucket by the back door all season, because it was free, and because we knew exactly what it did. Here is how you use it, and you must be careful. Because wood ash is strong, you take a small handful, maybe a half a cup, and you work it lightly into the soil around the base of each tomato plant, out near where the roots spread, not piled against the stem. Then you water it in. Do this once when the first little green tomatoes appear, and maybe one more time a few weeks later. That is plenty. Do not dump a whole bucket on one plant, because wood ash also raises the soil's sweetness level, what the English call the pH, and too much will lock up other nutrients. A light hand, twice a season, watered in. That is the whole secret to potassium. And it has been sitting in fireplaces all across this country, getting thrown in the trash. Now, if you do not burn wood, do not worry. You have another quiet source most people throw away, and it answers a problem that drives gardeners half mad every single year. Have you ever had a tomato that looked perfect on top, and then you turn it over, and the bottom is sunk in, leathery and black? That ugly brown patch on the bottom of the fruit? People see it and they panic. They think it is a disease. They run to the store and buy a spray for it, and the spray does nothing because it is not a bug and it is not a fungus. It is the plant going hungry for calcium at the exact moment the fruit needs it most. The English call it blossom end rot, and it ruins more home tomatoes than almost anything else. And what is the richest, cheapest source of calcium in your whole house? The eggshells you scrape into the trash every morning. We never threw an eggshell away. They went back to the chickens, or they went into the garden. Here is the trick that makes them actually work, because a whole eggshell tossed on the soil takes a year or more to break down, and that is too slow to help this year's fruit. You dry your shells, let them sit on the windowsill a few days, or warm them in the oven after you have cooked something just from the leftover heat. Then you crush them, really crush them down to almost a powder between 2 spoons or in an old coffee grinder you keep for the garden. The finer the powder, the faster the calcium reaches the roots. You work that powder into the soil around the plant, the same as the ash. The finer you grind it, the sooner your plant can drink it up, and the sooner that black rot stops appearing on the bottom of your fruit. So now you have the sweetness in, the mildew off, and the rot stopped. But I know what some of you are thinking right now, and it is a fair thought. You are thinking, this is all well and good for somebody starting a brand new garden in fresh soil. But my garden is 20 years old. My plants are already in the ground, already chest high, already halfway through the season. Is it too late for me? It is not too late, not even close. And this next part is for you, especially the folks with an established garden, an old yard, plants already growing, because everything I've told you, you can start this very weekend on the plants you already have with no digging up and starting over. The milk spray works on a plant that already has mildew today. The ash and the eggshell go right on top of established soil and water down to the roots. None of this needs a fresh start. None of it needs special equipment. But let me give you one more thing that is made for an established garden. Something you can do this weekend that costs you absolutely nothing. It is about water. I told you earlier that most folks are dead wrong about watering, and here's why. When a tomato plant is swimming in water, the fruit fills up with water too. That sugar I told you about gets diluted, spread thin, watered down inside the fruit. The big watery tomatoes you see are big because they are mostly water, and water has no flavor. The old way, the way we did it, was to ease back on the watering once the fruit was full-sized and just starting to turn color. Not to starve the plant, never that, but to stop drowning it. When you let the plant get just a little thirsty in those final weeks before harvest, the plant pulls back on the water, it sends into the fruit, and the sugar inside gets concentrated. More sugar, less water in the very same tomato. The English have studied this in their wine grapes for years. A little stress in the vine makes a sweeter fruit, and it is the exact same principle. So for your established plants this weekend, simply pull your watering back as the tomatoes start to ripen. Let the top inch of soil go dry between drinks. You will taste the difference in the very next tomato you pick, and it did not cost you 1 penny. It cost you doing less. That is the thing the whole industry hopes you never realize. So much of what they sell you is for doing more, buying more, pouring more on, and the old way was almost always about doing the right small thing at the right moment and letting nature carry the rest. An entire wall of products at the garden center, and the best trick of the season is to simply water less. There is no bottle they can sell you for that. So by now you have more than most folks down the road will ever know. You could stop here and have the best tomatoes on your street, but I made you a promise at the start. I told you I'd saved the real secret for the end, the one my people kept using while the rest of the world forgot it ever existed. And this is the one that ties it all together. This is the one that makes the plant defend itself. Let me tell you about the willow tree. On the low, wet corner of our land, down by the creek where the ground stayed soft, there grew a stand of willows. And every spring, my grandfather would cut a few young, whippy branches off those willows, the fresh green ones from that year's growth. He would chop them up, soak them in a bucket of water for a day or two until the water turned the color of weak tea. And he would water our seedlings and our tomato plants with that willow water. I asked him once why. He just said it makes them strong. He did not have the fancy word for it, but the science behind what he was doing is, to my mind, the most remarkable thing in this whole garden. Willow bark is full of a natural substance called salicylic acid. If that sounds familiar, it should. It is the very same compound that the English turned into aspirin. The old people chewed willow bark for a headache or a fever long before there was a pharmacy and the cure was real. But here is the part that almost nobody knows, the part that turns a headache remedy into the finest tomato secret there is. Salicylic acid is the alarm bell of the plant world. When a plant is attacked by a fungus, by an insect, by disease, it produces a little burst of salicylic acid inside itself, and that chemical signal races through the whole plant like a fire bell ringing through a town. It tells every leaf, every stem, get ready, danger is coming, raise your defenses. The English have a name for it now. They call it systemic acquired resistance. It means the plant turns on its own immune system, top to bottom, and stands ready to fight off mildew and disease before it ever arrives. And here is the trick my grandfather knew in his hands without knowing the words. If you give the plant a little salicylic acid from the outside, from the willow, you ring that alarm bell on purpose. You trick the plant into raising its defenses while it is still perfectly healthy, so when the mildew spores blow in on the August wind, the plant is already armored, already fighting, already strong, just like you said. This is not just folklore anymore either. Researchers have tested this directly at the University of Rhode Island. A master gardener named Martha McBurney grew tomato plants and treated them with a bit of dissolved aspirin, that same salicylic acid, sprayed right on the plants. The treated plants did not just resist disease better. They grew bigger, they grew faster. They produced more fruit than the untreated plants right beside them. The plants, given that tiny alarm signal, outperformed the ones left on their own. A measured result in a real trial, proving what an old man with a bucket of willow twigs understood generations before anyone wrote it down. So here's how you do it yourself. And you have two ways. If you have a willow tree or a neighbor with one, cut a good handful of the young green branches, the soft new growth, not the old gray wood. Chop them into pieces a few inches long, crush them a bit, and soak them in a bucket of water for a day or two. The water will pull the salicylic acid out of the bark. Then use that willow water to water your plants at the roots, or strain it and spray it on the leaves. Do it every couple of weeks through the growing season. And if you have no willow, the English already bottled it for you, and it is the cheapest thing in the pharmacy. A single plain uncoated aspirin tablet, the cheap kind, dissolved in about a gallon of water. Not the fancy coated kind, the plainest one they sell, 325 milligrams in a gallon of water. Let it dissolve fully, then spray a light mist over the leaves of your tomato plants, tops and bottoms, in the cool of the morning. Do this once every 2 or 3 weeks. You are ringing that alarm bell. You are waking up the plant's own defense, the defense it has had all along, that nobody ever taught it to use. And you will see plants that shrug off the mildew that flattens everyone else's garden, plants that stand dark green and heavy with fruit into the cool of fall. Think of what that one tablet does. It does the job of the expensive disease sprays, but instead of coating the plant in something to kill the fungus, it makes the plant strong enough to refuse the fungus on its own. It does not fight your battle for you. It hands the plant its own sword. That is the difference between the old way and the bought way in one small white pill that costs a few pennies. And that is the whole of it. The milk to scorch the mildew, the wood ash to haul the sugar into the fruit, the eggshell to stop the rot, the thirst to concentrate the sweetness, and the willow to wake the plant's own defenses so it stands strong all season long. Not one of those came from a store shelf. Not one of them needed a bottle with a brand on it. Every single one was sitting in a kitchen, a fireplace, or a tree by the creek, free for the taking the whole time. That is the thing I most want you to carry away from this. It is not really about tomatoes. It is about the quiet truth that you were sold dependence you never needed. Year after year, dollar after dollar, for problems your own grandparents solved with what they already had in their hands. The plain people never lost that knowledge, because we never had the money or the inclination to throw it away for something in a plastic jug. And now you have it back. Something that was quietly taken from you, returned, free and yours to keep. You are not the kind of person who keeps overpaying for what nature already gives away. You prove that by sitting with me all the way to the end of this. So use it. Walk out to your garden this weekend and try just one of these and taste the difference for yourself. And do not forget what I asked you at the start. Tell me down in the comments what state or what growing zone you are in. I read them, and I want to know who is out there growing alongside me. Drop it in, even just the name of your state, so I can talk to your weather next time. If this is the kind of knowledge you want more of, the plain, practical, handed down kind that the outside world forgot, then come along with us. This is not about following a channel. It is about a group of folks getting back the old, useful things that were quietly taken from us, one secret at a time. Because next, I want to show you the simple way my people kept potato beetles off the whole patch without a single drop of poison, using nothing but a plant you can grow right between the rows. It works, and almost nobody remembers it. I will see you there.